today's video, this is a warning that we will be discussing the Darkspawn today, including content that some may find disturbing. They say the Darkspawn came in a crawl, whispers in the dark, people vanishing along the deep roads. When Dumat rose in the first Blight, the dwarves already knew there was something different about these creatures that had harried them in the darkness. They were bolder, organised, and when they at last had their general, their decimation was fast. To this day, the Blights have been the endless fight for the dwarves. They lost an entire empire in the 1,000 years since Dumat rose, and it has never been reclaimed. But pieces of it held, at least for a little while, and the battle was not always an endless crush. When Paragon Caradin built his golems, the dwarves had a chance to reclaim what had been stolen. Caradin, by the right of all paragons, was given the chance to create a new city, to take his house with him into the deep roads and expand the empire. Caradin built Bownammar, but it was not for his house. The City of the Dead, now known as the Dead Trenches, was built as a shrine, a mausoleum, the final resting place of the Legion of the Dead. The Legion held it. While the Darkspawn massed and surged, they fought, and when the Darkspawn swell retreated, they clung to their temples. In the deep depths they returned their fallen soldiers to the stone in its hallowed halls. Bownammar became a fortress besieged. It was not only the Legion of the Dead that slept eternally in those halls, but shades bound to the stone. And beyond those halls of Bownammar, behind a gauntlet of deadly traps and strange magics, Caradin forged his Legion of Steel. We will speak more of Caradin and his golems, and of the strange magics that can be found in the deep roads in following videos. For now it is enough that when High King Valtor struck into the depths of the deep roads to capture Caradin and force him to make more golems, Caradin refused. It was the deep crevices of the Dead Trenches that bore witness to the Paragon's screams as he underwent the same bindings as all his other victims. Bownammar lies at some great distance from Orzammar, though its location was not as lost as that of the other Thaigs. In fact, the main Thaig itself remained a bastion of the Legion of the Dead until it was finally lost in Darkspawn raids a mere 17 years before the start of the 5th Blight in 913 Dragon. The Legion of the Dead is distinct to Orzammar, but its roots do appear older given its sister organisation from Kal Sharok, the Rockknockers, and the existence of the Shah Bratal, or Revered Defenders, from Inquisition's Descent DLC. Whatever they may have originally been, the Legion of the Dead is now focused entirely on the fight with the Darkspawn, and so the fact that their own fortress is now often a Darkspawn nest is of particular significance. The permanent loss of Bownammar was a personal insult, and one the Legion has never taken well. It is for this reason that the hero of Ferelden and 5th Blight visits Bownammar in the search for Paragon Branca and the Anvil of the Void. The Legion is already there, led by Cardal, a seasoned veteran, trying to take it back. This is an endless dance. Bownammar has been lost and reclaimed more times than the memories can remember. What Thaigs the Darkspawn lay claim to often become nests, and the worst of these nests are built around broodmothers, a form of ghoul twisted by the Blight. Ghouls survive the taint, at least for a little while, but in the doing so often go mad, their minds subservient to the Darkspawn to who they become servants until they waste away. There are only really two types of humanoid ghouls, the regular sort described above, and broodmothers. The regular sort serve in the deep roads until they're called upon as fodder. It is they that wind up fed to the captured female ghouls. Its feeding is what creates the broodmothers. We know this thanks to a rather disturbing first-hand account by Hespeth, a tainted ghoul and next on the list of how broodmothers come to be. Hespeth's account mentions violations and cannibalism, with the actual emphasis of this poem on force-feeding of tainted ghoul flesh to would-be broodmothers. Given the way exposure to the taint transforms other creatures such as Beresgarn, Blightwolves, other ghouls and even Grey Wardens, this may actually be enough to create a broodmother on its own. As for how the broodmothers actually breed, we must consider the concept of an insect hive mind, mentioned almost everywhere we speak of the Darkspawn, from the Calling, to the Stolen Throne, to Last Flight, to Dragon Age Origins. We're told by the Wardens in the Calling that whatever one knows, they all know. The Darkspawn are described by other characters as a mass of black maggots, a great mass of noise that made him think of an insect hide, a horde of bees, an anthill stirring to life, and a strange infestation. And anyone who has ever seen one of the awakened broodmother's children can contest that they do look very much like insects at times. Given the parallels we do see, it's likely that the Darkspawn are similar to insects in our own world, from the concept of a queen defended by a hive. It's likely these workers, the Darkspawn, are produced by means of parthenogenesis, a real-world concept by which female animals can reproduce entirely alone. and we have examples of this occurring in everything from pit vipers to stick insects, from lizards to sawfish. We do not as yet know the origins of the Darkspawn with any confidence. The Chantry has its tale, and the dwarves have their own speculations. So much is unknown about the Darkspawn themselves that the information here is limited. What we do know is that the broodmothers give birth in litters. Litters can contain anywhere from 20 to 50 Darkspawn, which emerge in a live state. Upon their birth, Darkspawn take only a few weeks to develop into full versions, and in the meantime, they try to kill each other. In the event one Darkspawn does manage to kill all the others of its brood, this Darkspawn is recognised as an alpha, capable of commanding others. Over their lifetimes, broodmothers might birth over 1,000 Darkspawn, and so a single captive can significantly bolster the ranks of the horde. While some types of Darkspawn may be rare, this explains the higher numbers in the Blights, when they have had their time to build those numbers into a formidable force, even with limited broodmothers. The types of broodmother dictates the types of Darkspawn. Most common in the current age are Hurlocks, born of human broodmothers, which serve as the basic foot soldier for the Darkspawn horde. From Dwarven broodmothers come Genlocks, which have inherited their stocky stature and their resistance to magics. Elven broodmothers give birth to Sharlocks, or as they are better known, Shrieks, because of the piercing cries they emit. Fast and quick, they track and hunt their prey in the darkness. As for the Ogres, the rarest of the Darkspawn, they descend from the Kossuth, the precursors of the modern-day Kunari, likely from a colony established in the Korcari wilds in -410 Ancient. They are often seen only during Blights, and then in small numbers, perhaps up to 100 or so in the horde. Regardless of their type, all of them are driven to seek out the old gods, and in Bownammar we witness their forges at work, supplying the horde for the 5th Blight under the command of Othemiel. But Othemiel did not come from the depths of Bownammar. In fact, Othemiel was likely imprisoned in the vicinity of the fortress of Kul-Baras, the lost Thaig that proved the home of something more sinister. We cannot directly place Kul-Baras on any map, though we know from passages in the Calling that it lies in the vicinity of Lake Calenhad, somewhere between the lost Ortan Thaig and the northwestern edge of the lake. Kul-Baras has been almost entirely lost over time to the Darkspawn corruption, and it was, at least during the events of the Calling, the site of a significant excavation. Stranger still, Kul-Baras itself may even be located somewhere in what are called the Deeper Roads, the areas beneath the Deep Roads, linked to the Titans, which we shall discuss at greater length in a later video. Kul-Baras is old enough and fell long enough ago to have been swallowed by the Blight, covered in its black fungus and its taint. The Darkspawn gathered there came at the summons of an archdemon, which wardens in the area felt for themselves. In the darkness they dug through the dwarven halls and into the natural rock itself with their bare hands. The passage is as follows. Thousands upon thousands of the creatures toiled, all so closely intermingled it seemed as if a mass of black maggots writhed in some festering carcass. The organic strands covered everything, great hives of it strewn like nerve clusters and dangling amid the horrific workers that moved among the shadows below. Were they digging? He had the impression that the masses of them were all engaged in some sort of industry, all united in moving great portions of rock out of the cavern and expanding it even further. Yet there were no sounds of tools crashing against stone, no hammering sounds or grunts of exertion. All he could hear was a rhythmic groan, a keening pitch that it seemed each of the Darkspawn contributed to. The sound of it made his skin crawl, and he realized that the chorus in the distance responded to it. Like a cat that arched its back to meet a brushing hand, it became ecstatic. It surged and almost overwhelmed his senses. Kul-Baras bears the markings of a Thaig of the older kingdom, lacking paragon statues and of older construction, and instead bearing something similar to the altar that we witness in DA2, according to the following description. They raced ahead down the new passage, evidence of rubble appearing amidst the Darkspawn filth. Ancient statues lined the rocky walls here, most of them so crumbled and covered in blackness they could barely be recognized as such. Had the dwarves existed even here beneath the Deep Roads? There was no time to stop and admire the scenery, however. They ran, breathing hard from exertion and panic. Marek stumbled upon a patch of uneven rock, and Uther darted in to steady him before he fell. He nodded his thanks to her and kept going. The passage opened up into a cavern, and they immediately slowed. The structure fully filled half the chamber, a wide set of stairs flanked by tall statues leading up to a massive dais lined with tall pillars. The rocky wall behind the dais had been carved into a great vaulted arch. Once this had been an impressive sight, perhaps a temple honouring some ancient dwarven deity, but now it was blackened with decay and corruption. So much of it lined the floor leading up to the stairs that it had gathered into black clusters, twisted sacks as large as a man. The clusters hung from the ceiling as well, slowly oozing filth down onto the ground where it collected in stagnant green pools. There was some kind of altar at the top of the dais, simple and flat, and only as high as Marik's waist. At least, he assumed it had been an altar. Now it was so covered by a bubbling, festering mass that he didn't even want to get close to it. Kul-Baras is massive as a complex, potentially larger than Orzammar. It had both deep roads exits and an exit on the surface, and given its proximity to Ferelden's Circle Tower at Kinloch Hold, once an Avar settlement built with the help of the dwarves. It may have been linked to interactions with the old Ferelden tribes, meaning in its time Kul-Baras was an impressive location. In truth, though, we do not know the purpose of this thaig, or even its primary trade. The presence of the familiar altar, the proximity to locations like Ortan and Hedron, and its connection to an archdemon make it a very strange location in the Deep Roads, and one that we do, even now, know very little about. Kul-Baras during 910 Dragon is the home to another Darkspawn, one who keeps libraries and conducts extensive research into Blight magic and trying to cure the Calling. This Darkspawn is the Architect, and it is here we link everything back to the 5th Blight, to Dragon Age Awakenings, to Dragon Age 2's Legacy DLC, and to Dragon Age Inquisition. The Architect's plan was always to break the Darkspawn from the call of the old gods, and it was he who sought out and tainted the old god Themiel, leading to the 5th Blight. In the depths of Kul-Baras he hatched this plan, after extensive study through ancient tomes, many of which he may have rebound and repaired himself, and many of which are in ancient Tevinter dialects. This itself should come as no surprise, given who the Architect actually is. Whatever else we may think of the Chantry's version of events, we know it is fact from a primary source, Corypheus, that the Magister's Sidereal attempted to crack the Fade and walk within the Golden City. We are given their names, or the names they undertook, in the Chant of Light's dissonant verses no less, in the Canticle of Silence. The Watchman of Night, Lusican's High Priest. The Forgerite of Fire, Toth's High Priest. The Appraiser of Slavery, Andoral's High Priest. The Augur of Mystery, Razakel's High Priest. The Madman of Chaos, Zazakel's High Priest. The Architect of Beauty, Themiel's High Priest. And the Conductor of the Choir of Silence, Corypheus, the High Priest of Dumat. If the chant is to be believed, Corypheus was the one who hatched this plan, but the Architect of Beauty was its master designer, and the rituals they undertook were his. Upon awakening, Corypheus does not know where he is, or even that he is a Darkspawn. The Architect believes it is a mere emissary, one of the Darkspawn mages and nothing more, though one free from the call of the old gods, or at least this is what it claims. We have other mentions of the Magister's Sidereal in a codex written by a dwarf that leads us to suggest that the others are still alive and operating in the depths. This codex, a different Darkspawn, speaks of a man called Amok, who ran into a talking Darkspawn sometime around 920 Dragon, who offered him tea and wanted to talk about surfaces. But there are other stories, those of Darkspawn kings down in the deeper roads, which spoke of cities gone black, and which fought. These tales are older, dating back 3 generations, and so whatever lurks down in the depths, the Magister's Sidereal are among them. As for Kul-Baras, it was abandoned in the wake of the events of 910 Dragon, and all the research materials and books disappeared without a trace. With them went the bodies of the Grey Wardens slain there, and we know the Architect was collecting these corpses to create his own Darkspawn, joining with Grey Warden blood. Whatever became of the Architect, or even of Corypheus, is unknown. Both made use of powerful magics linked to the Blight itself, magics it could teach humans, like First Enchanter Ramil of Kinloch Hold. Those magics have the power to accelerate the taint, and possibly even cure it. But this is unlikely though, since if it were so easy, the Architect would not have needed his Darkspawn joining. Blight magic used by emissaries is the magic of the Void. It is its own type of magic, described by First Enchanter Vivienne de Fer in Inquisition as one of 3 wineglasses. The False Calling and Corypheus' ability to resurrect are manifestations of this Blight magic, and for this reason it is likely that the Architect, even if killed in Dragon Age Awakenings, is still alive somewhere in the depths. As for Bownammar, its halls have been cleared of Darkspawn, at least for the moment, and depending on who is king in Orzammar, it may even have been reclaimed completely. Caradin's anvil has been destroyed, but his gauntlet remains, as do many of the mysteries of the Deep Roads. Next time we'll dig a bit deeper into the concepts of magic in the Deep Roads, as we explore locations like the fascinating Dwarven Thaigs, the historical creation of golems, and mysterious rituals deep beneath the earth. For now, I leave you with more mysteries than answers. If you like this content and want to support me, please check out my Patreon. Thank you as well to all my current Patreon supporters, without whom content like this would not be possible. A Trasnel Tunsha, may you always find your way in the dark.